Okay, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakat to everyone. Welcome to this short introduction session on the forthcoming Shari'ah Intelligence Masterclass, inshallah, which will be held at the TML Education Center in Trinidad. It's something which we've been looking for a long time, especially since we had a similar program in the UK where 6 people from the Caribbean attended. And now alhamdulillah, we are on the verge of having it done in Trinidad, inshallah. We're very thankful for the Trinidad Muslim League for facilitating the program um, at their main center, which is in St. Joseph in Trinidad. And inshallah, hopefully it will be a very useful, productive program for everyone. I'm just going to go through everyone has this resource pack, which I've circulated. But just to let you know, Shaykh Nurudeen, inshallah, will be giving us a short introduction about the program. He will be joined from Nigeria with Sister Salatu Saleh and Brother Nasir Bellu, inshallah, who will also be coming to the program. They will be coming from Nigeria. There are some who will be coming from the UK. Some of one or two of them have managed to finish the first part of the program, but they have not done the second part, so they are coming to benefit from the second part as well, inshallah. And then there's a couple of others who haven't done either parts, but they will be coming from the UK, including one of the trustees of the Islamic Foundation in the UK, in Leicester, UK. The vice president of the Islamic Society of North America, inshallah, will also be coming from Chicago. We'll also have some participants who will be coming from Canada. And then we have others who will be coming from the Caribbean islands. The largest contingent will be coming from Jamaica, from Guyana, inshallah, along with Brother Sheikh Alim and Brother Wazir. So in terms of the program itself, as most of you know, that the program is divided up in a sense into 2 different courses, and they will be running concurrently. And the way that we intend to do it is that the first course will cover the 2 books which we have circulated as a PDF, but which you will get your hard copies at the program. And this will be held over the first 4 days, which is from Saturday until Tuesday. On Saturday, we will start at 8:30 and Sunday at 8:30. And on the weekdays, we'll start at 9 a.m., inshallah. And we'll finish each day at 5:45, which is just before Salatul Maghrib. And we'll have dinner at Salatul Maghrib. For those who don't want to join us, it's fine. But dinner will be provided for everyone at TML, inshallah, after Salatul Maghrib, inshallah. If you have any queries or anything like that, you can always, text me, inshallah, or text one of the other organizers. What's the difference between the 2 programs? In the first one, as I mentioned, we'll be going through the books, and the second one will be applied, which I think Shaykh Nurudeen will explain a lot more detail today, inshallah. You will notice that in this PDF document, which I've circulated, I've included 2 QR codes. One QR code has the link to all 54 videos of the Shari'ah Intelligence program, which has been recorded and which is on YouTube. So you can get a feel for the course and the content. And this can be accessed simply by scanning the QR code for the YouTube videos, as well as if you want a copy of the of the PDF. You can also get a copy by scanning the QR code, which will give you a link so you can download the soft copy, inshallah, of the book. We do have some spaces still remaining on the program, and if it is that you know of anyone who would like to benefit from it, feel free to let them know, and you can send them the links, inshallah. So with this, I will invite Sheikh Nurudeen to address us, inshallah. As most of you know, he is the Director of Research and Training at the Dawah Institute of Nigeria. I've had a pleasure of being in Nigeria and spending some time with them, and was absolutely a fantastic experience. And I'm sure it will be the same for you when we meet with the team coming from Nigeria, inshallah. Sheikh Nurudeen.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Riza, for that introduction. I first look at it as an honor and a privilege to meet with all of you. Haven't seen any faces, a few pictures, but I'm sure, inshallah, within a week, we'll know what most of you, inshallah, who are there will look like. And I look forward to getting to know you all better, inshallah. And my parents decades ago visited Trinidad, so I guess in their footsteps, it'll be a pleasure to get to see what they saw or what it is now. So for an introduction to the courses, I don't know, Dr. Riza, how many minutes? Then it gives me an idea of.
No, it's the rest of the program
the
is for yourself, so you can, yeah, you can go ahead, inshallah.
Okay.
I think we are losing your bandwidth, Sheikh Nurudeen, or are you having connection problems? Because we are, that's the problem with the internet in Nigeria at times. So let's see. Okay, so we'll just wait for him to log back in again, and then we can start. Sometimes the bandwidth in Nigeria, especially in Minna, can be a bit slow.
Apologies, please, for that.
Yeah, this is much better.
Good. I had a modem that decided it didn't want to continue working. Anyway, so three major fields we would be looking at, all of them related to ijtihad. So juristic reasoning and the tools, the forms of evidence, the main subjects that help scholars in deriving rulings, arriving at rulings, and deciding which rulings are more appropriate to their particular context. So these three fields, one of them usulul fiqh, the second qawaid al-fiqhiyya, and the third maqasid sharia. For the purpose of a metaphor Usulul Fiqh gives the protocols of the use of primary and secondary evidence, Quran and Hadith, and then the secondary sources, which most of you already know, Ijma, Qiyas, consensus, reasoning by analogy, consideration of public interest, and the rest of them. We will use an acronym, Iqra, I miss you, as an acronym that makes it easy to remember all the key sources of evidence used in Sharia. And the reason why this is important is it helps us in understanding how classical scholars arrived at differing conclusions on certain issues, or sometimes they even arrive at the same conclusion, but differing approaches to those decisions, those fatwas, those rulings they give. To give an example for some who may be used or maybe not too used to usulul fiqh, if I asked you to calculate what is 5 plus 5 times 5 plus 5, okay? So 5 plus 5 times 5 plus 5. What's that equal to? And some people say the answer is 100. So 5 plus 5 is 10, multiplied by 5 plus 5, which is 10. So 10 times 10 is 100. Others say 5 plus 5 is 10, times 5 is 50, plus 5 is 55. So the answer is 55. And somebody else says, no, the answer is 35. And that you do the multiplication first. So you do 5 times 5 first, which is 25, plus 5, 30, plus 5, 35. And so what we find is, when it comes to different answers to the same question, 5 plus 5 times 5 plus 5, which is the right answer? Or which is the answer closer to the truth? Which is the answer further away from the truth? For mathematics, it is to look at BODMAS. There's an order of mathematical operations that allows us to first agree on methodology, and that methodology used by scholars in the field of maths would be the opinion, the methodology of the ulama of maths, if I use that metaphor. And what that methodology tells us is that we should do the multiplication first. So in the BODMAS acronym, brackets, and then to the order of, and then division, then multiplication, additions, and then subtraction. Multiplication comes before addition. So in 5 plus 5 times 5 plus 5, we do the times first, the multiplication first, 5 times 5, which is 25, and then we add 5 and 5, which is 35. So if you use the methodology agreed by mathematicians, you would reach 35 as the correct answer. Many people today go into giving fatwas and saying this fatwa is the correct one, this one has this number of people behind it, and this scholar said this, etc. And this is the fatwa in Saudi, or this is the fatwa from Egypt or wherever. And they start using the names of people, the number of people, the age of the fatwa as being the criteria for its appropriateness to our context or for its correctness. What Usulul Fiqh does is helps us, give us the religious BODMAS. What's the Islamic BODMAS for assessing right and wrong and helping us get closer to what is closer to the truth. Many of our ulama are not specialists in Usulul Fiqh. Many of them have not studied it. or if they have, it's been on such a superficial level just to know the field exists. But they've not really studied how it works. So it's a little like an engineer who knows the different parts of the car, but doesn't know how to drive. So what we try to do is introduce scholars who are not used to usulul fiqh or haven't studied it, because many studied hadith sciences, some studied tafsir, some studied qira'ah and recitation, some studied fiqh, you know, just the law, but not how the law was arrived at. Well, that's what usulul fiqh is about. And part of the reason why we do this is by exposing participants and scholars and Muslim activists to the diversity of approaches. They begin to have a greater respect for the diversity and more intellectual humility about their opinion. They start to arrive at, you know, the kind of conclusion that Abu Hanifa, in another instance, Imam Shafi once said, that I believe I am right with the possibility that I am wrong. And I believe the other person is wrong with the, you know, real possibility that he is right and I am wrong. So what we want is to help people start to calm down on opinions that are within the spectrum of acceptability. You know, so if we look at it as the Sirat al-Mustaqim is a straight road, a straight path, but how wide is this path? In certain areas, of course, the Quran and Sunnah are categorical regarding the ma'alum min ad-din bid-darura, as they are described as the, you know, those definitive, fundamental, known essentials of the religion. You know, in Aqidah, there's one God, angels, prophethood, qadr, hereafter, etc. So no scholar argues about that. It's not a subject of ijtihad. There's no difference of opinion among scholars when it comes to that type of subject, because it's based on categorical, explicitly clear text. But where the text is not categorical in its implication or the meaning or the integrity of the source is questioned by some. So some scholars are very skeptical about qiyas and reasoning by analogy. Others don't feel comfortable that they should be constrained by the opinion of a Sahaba. They feel, no, I go with Quran and Sunnah, and I don't want somebody else's opinion, as respectable as it is. I don't want to be bound by that. I can listen to it and decide if to follow. Others feel that's a very authoritative source. It makes more sense to follow an opinion of a Sahaba than to start using my own head. Others say, yeah, but the Sahaba didn't see your situation, so why trust the opinion of a Sahaba if it is not meant for all time and all places? And the list continues, and new issues come that require consideration of public interest or maslaha. So what we find, of course, is that scholars who study hadith don't study maslaha, they don't study public interest, they don't study urf and ada, people's customs as a recognized source of law in Sharia. I mean, if these are not harmful, they don't study istihsan, juristic preference, they don't study the consideration of public interest, maslaha, they don't study qawaid al-fiqhiyya and the Islamic legal maxims, which are like the traffic rules of ijtihad. If ijtihad is the driving of the car, qawaid are the traffic rules that also regulate what proper ijtihad should look like and proceed with. But also, it's important to know the maqasid of Sharia, the objectives. What's this ijtihad supposed to finally arrive at? And not knowing that is like knowing the traffic rules and how to drive, but not knowing what your destination looks like. And having a very clear idea of the destination is really critical. And so we try to teach these three so that people are able to triangulate, that the difference of opinion among madhabs can actually be narrowed down to what is more appropriate for a particular context by looking at it, not just from the perspective of usul, but also from the perspective of qawaid, the Islamic legal maxim or Islamic legal philosophy, and the higher intents and objectives, the values, those good things that the Sharia wants to realize. This is important so that we don't fall into one of two traps. One, you don't want to make haram what is halal, because that's a form of shirk. you also don't want to make halal what is haram, because that's also a form of shirk. So there's the istihlal, which is haram, and the istihram, which is haram, the making permissible what is prohibited. You don't want to do that. If something is prohibited, let's be clear and let's know what evidence it is. But if the evidence for prohibition is somebody's ijtihad, then it can be reviewed, especially if the context has changed, especially if the society has changed. An old fatwa might have been based on urf, that custom at the time, priorities at the time, political situation at the time might have been the reason why scholars gave a particular opinion. But if that context has changed, then it's an obligation on Muslims to change to fit the new context. So what we do is, and just to go through the main table of contents, we would look at what usul al-fiqh is, its history, how it evolved as a tool for scholars to be able to determine whether something was halal or haram, whether it was fard or wajib, whether it was mustahab or mubah, in other words, the spectrum of permissibility or undesirability of things. So we look at that. We look at the kind of tools that help scholars decide whether the evidence was enough to put something into the box of fard and wajib, or whether it should go into the box of mustahab, encouraged, or whether it should go into the box of mubah, or the box of makruh, or the box of haram. We also look at the Hanafi nuance, which is slightly different from that, but very useful to know. And of course, we look more carefully at the type of evidence that is used, what is debated among scholars, what is not, just so that if we hold certain opinions, we shouldn't start confusing the opinion of a scholar based on ijtihad and other scholars differ from the opinion of Allah. Part of what some extremists have done is to take their ijtihad and treat that as that of Allah, and where people differ, they look at that as kufr, as moving out of the religion. So we look at these primary sources, secondary sources, and in the primary sources, Quran, pretty straightforward in many respects. The Hadith, also pretty straightforward, but an important distinction between between Sirah and Sunnah. Sirah is, biography of what happened. It is descriptive. Sunnah is generally prescriptive. So we are asked to go with the Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet, not Quran and Sirah. So it's not everything that was historically done is expected to be a source of legislation. And so even when we look at the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, a number of distinguished scholars would make it clear there's Sunnah that is Tashri, that is binding, that we follow, and there's the Sunnah that is Ghaira Tashri. It's not binding. There's the Sunnah that is for everybody to follow, and there's Sunnah that is just for leaders. So if you're not a leader, you do not say the Prophet launched an army, the Prophet made a treaty, the Prophet assigned people as governors, therefore I can also call for war, I can also make treaties with other countries. I don't need to get the permission of my head of state. It's already in the Quran and the Sunnah. The Prophet did it. He's our role model. We do it. Or you say, since the Prophet also sanctioned and allowed a particular punishment or meted a particular offense with a particular punishment, it's in the Sunnah. Therefore, we can do it. And if I catch a thief or I catch somebody, I've got the evidence in the Quran and Sunnah for what to do, and therefore I can do it. That's the Sunnah for you if you are a judge. So the need to recognize the roles the Prophet played and which Sunnah applies to everybody, which Sunnah applies to you. So anything to do with jihad, for example, is the territory of a political leader, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, the head of state, president, caliph, whatever, sultan, whatever we call such a person. It's not for everyone. So it's not for somebody to just say, we have decided we're declaring jihad and go ahead with it. That would be an abuse of the Sunnah. So we look at the Quran, we look at the Sunnah, we look at the context of each ruling, so Maghrib is wajib, for example. Everybody knows that. But what we often forget is it's not wajib in an absolute sense. It's not wajib for a woman in her periods. It's not wajib until the time for Maghrib has come. And so with many rulings, alcohol and, so many things, to know the context that Sharia stipulates for its own rulings. It's called the Ahkamul Wad'iyah. The sabab, the causes of the ruling, the conditions for those rulings, the hindrances, so the terms and conditions for each, so that when those terms and conditions change, then the rulings also change. We will look at the protocols, the approaches, starting with istishab, that everything is permissible except what is prohibited, for example, or that things are all pure by default unless there's evidence to the contrary, that people are free of obligations until there's evidence that they are responsible, that people are innocent until proven guilty, that harm is haram unless it is proven necessary. So we will look at these laws of defaults, the legal presumptions of Sharia as the starting fatwas on everything. So it's just to look at, what are we talking about? What is the default there? So that it's clear how scholars approach the presentation of evidence for their positions, how they critique or criticize other positions. We will look at how they maximize certainty and control the quality of fatwas by looking at the legal maxims. And there are 5 legal maxims. We will look at more than just those 5, but most of the other maxims fall under one of these 5 universal maxims. They call them the Qawaid al-Fiqhiyya, al-Kulliyya, al-Umur bi-Maqasidiha, matters are judged by the purposes they fulfill or by their purposes. Al-Yaqeen la yazulu bi-Shak, certainty is not overruled by doubt. Ad-Darar yuzal, harm must be eliminated. Al-Mashaqqa tajlibu at-Taysir, hardship calls for concessions, and ease and al-Ada muhakkama, custom is a basis, so has the weight of law. And we look at how each of these is derived directly from the Quran, Sunnah, and implemented in the life of the Prophet and the Sahaba, and how these maxims help strengthen or weaken a particular position. How the scholars use the maxims as an additional filter against folly, against mistake. They become part of a system of safety nets that Sharia has in place, just as in usul we have maslaha and saddu zariya and istihsan, so consideration of public interest, the prevention of harm, and what was the wisdom of the jurist in a particular situation to realize the maqasid and prevent harm. So we look at how the qawaid are also used to maximize certainty, but also used in identifying extremist or wrong positions in Sharia. We will look at bid'ah and the debates and how scholars approach things, and the use of this issue of looking at different approaches, different angles, is to help us respect diversity better and to recognize where is the human side. So we have one Sharia, but we have different schools of fiqh, because ijtihad is required there. And of course, while we do have some differing definitions of Sharia, but there's the thawabit, there's the fixed, there's the non-changing, eternal part of Sharia, but there's the flexible, contextual, evolving part of Sharia that is regulated. It's not arbitrary, it's not uncontrolled. Just like with the scientific method, there's a methodology of gathering information, agreed tools, agreed guidelines for what constitutes evidence, the method of analysis before you arrive at a conclusion and start getting emotional about your conclusion, but to always stay curious, to be able to and be ready to reassess information, because we know we are not all knowing. New information always changes our conclusions, new methods of analysis. So long as our methods of analysis and the methods of acquiring information are going to keep changing, we should be ready to change our conclusions or accommodate at least the possibility that we might be wrong and to try and understand where are other opinions coming from, so that we are comfortable with assessing human decisions. This is important for da'wah, this is important for Muslim unity, it's important for dousing some of the tension that exists, it's important for intellectual humility when we see new opinions we've never heard of from other madhabs, and we don't understand how in the world did Maliki madhab say that dog saliva is not najas, or that it is not haram, only makruh to eat a carnivorous animal. You know, where's that coming from? He is the scholar of Medina. His teachers were students of the Sahaba, you know, clear hadith on some of these issues. So just to understand the various paradigms, approaches, how it's not as simple as they didn't know the hadith. Sometimes it's because they have other evidence that is stronger. And so we will look at what exactly is a madhab as a school of a methodology, as opposed to a school of conclusions. We will look at the maqasid Sharia, the higher intents and objectives of Sharia, and how they are derived directly from the Quran and the Sunnah. So those maqasid of Sharia that scholars are certain about, and those maqasid that they would be less certain about or debate. And of those maqasid, what do they consider the daruriyat khamsa, or sab'a, the fundamental agreed objectives of Islam, of the Quran and the Sunnah, that are derived, they are mu'tabara, they are text-based, there's clear evidence that preservation and promotion of deen excuse me, is a fundamental maqasid of Sharia, that the preservation and protection of life is a fundamental maqasid and objective of Sharia, that the preservation of the intellect, you know, protecting it from intoxication and making sure it's educated, that the intellect being protected and its functioning promoted is one of the purposes of Sharia, that the preservation of human dignity, or family, or the wealth and property and belongings of people, that these are all maqasid of Sharia established by clear text of the Quran and the Sunnah, and we see them in various opinions, fatwas, played out in hadith and opinions of Sahaba. But then you also have the universal maqasid like justice and compassion and freedom, and how some scholars have represented these, not just as you know, the daruriyat, the essential ones, and the haja, the supporting, or also important, and then the luxuries that all of, you know, we look at the various ways scholars classify the maqasid.